the platform for
You are listening to Historyman. Take it.
You are listening to Historyman, the platform for historians, curators, and authors to tell their stories of the American Revolution, walk in the footsteps of heroes, and proclaim freedom reigns. On today's episode, we're kind of changing gears slightly. The Historyman Podcast is branching out and starting Historyman Comics. We are retelling the stories of the American Revolution for a new generation. We are reintroducing those real heroes to our children. Our guest today is no stranger to creating or illustrating comic books in that industry. We are proud to introduce our listeners to Rick Emond. He has partnered with Historyman LLC to create this exciting new series of comics under the Historyman Comics brand. So welcome, Rick.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Rick, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for a living.
I draw pictures, I write words, and people give me money. I've worked with Marvel. I worked with an artist who worked with Marvel in DC. Did a bunch of work for them at some other companies. A bunch of small companies over time, and a lot of independents. Done a lot of that. Movie posters, and also I had a stint where I was into advertising and marketing. Hated it.
Did you?
I did. I despised it. It was so bad. There was no, it felt like being creative, but no. So.
Well, for our listeners, I actually found you on a freelancer site and looked at some of your work. I see over your left shoulder a comic book that you had illustrated, reference to the Samurai Cowboy.
Right.
You did a fantastic job with that.
I did.
And you. So when I was looking for an artist, I was looking for someone who had a historical background look, and I gravitated to your work, and I know our listeners and ultimately our purchasers of these comic books will be excited about your work within the framework of what we're trying to do here at Historyman Comics. So how can people reach you on your website, or if they're interested in your work?
Well, for my website, it's simply Rick Emond, EMOND.com. And to reach me, it's just Rick at rickemond.com.
Genre of the comics, the illustrative graphic artists and stuff, that's a little different. What's the differences in your mind?
From a novel and a comic, well, a novel can give you the innermost thoughts of someone. You can take a chapter like Hemingway. I remember reading, I think it was Islands in the Stream, and there was, God, it seemed like a chapter on a sunset, which was really nice. But I knew much more about that sunset than I ever wanted to know. At the end of that, because I want to get on with the story. But it's painting with words, whereas with the comic book, it's the artwork tends to supplement the words. In other words, a painting is worth 1,000 words. That old saying, and it's true in this case. Let's say in a film, you have thousands and thousands or what have you of frames. In a comic, you have to choose the particular frames that you need, say from that motion picture, to tell that story. That particular frame at that particular moment in the story, what's necessary. And again, in the words, you can't go on and on and on forever, but you have to be very cognizant of the space that you have, the number of pages that you're working with, and trying to fit it all together in a neat little package.
There's almost a partnership between the reader and the artist in that, and this is certainly my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert here, but
Yes, I am.
You have individual frames, and
Right.
you're taking this parts of the story that you need, that you think are the most compelling, and the partnership is that the reader fills in the gaps between the frames. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. In a novel, there are no images mostly, and the reader is visualizing to whatever extent they can what the writer is depicting for them. In some cases, people have they make a film or something out of this, and the writer will have a vision of what it is that they were depicting in words, and then they make the film, and they get to see the set, and they're totally blown away. It never occurred to them, or, oh my God, it's exactly the way I envisioned it, and they know they got that across.
So what are some of the limitations that you have in this genre?
Okay, let's see. You gave me a page that had there was a lot of this was recently. You gave me a page that had a lot going on as far as conversation, as far as the character does this, and then the character moves over to there, and then gets onto that, and sometimes you can just say, no, yeah, that's great, but I'm going to kind of exclude those things, and I'm going to put I'm going to concentrate on these few movements, but this particular page, I liked everything that you had, everything that you were discussing, as far as, I don't know, well, I'll just say, again, getting on the horse, moving toward the horse, getting on the horse, turning to someone, seeing something down the road. You can't show all that because your page would have 100 different not captions, but panels on it. So what you have to do is say, okay, when this person was walking to the horse, does that need to have, do you need to have the picture of that, or can it simply be, I think in one case, I have the gentleman getting onto the horse. Now I recall, okay, you had somebody walking down the stairs, saying goodbye to their family, turning, getting onto the horse, turning back to to their family. I think it was a wave or something like that. Okay, so what I did was I put them on the horse. There, you see the family beyond them on the porch, and to make so that this person walked down the stairs. The person walked over to the horse. The person got on the horse. In order to give it not just have the person on the horse, you throw some movement into it. I have him throwing his leg over the saddle, right, while he's looking back toward his family, and they're talking, because nobody's going to stop dead. Wait until Daddy's on the horse before we talk to him. They're going to be having a conversation the entire time. So that's what's happening in that panel.
It's interesting because as you're talking and explaining how you're deciphering what I've written, I've actually gone back and forth with the way I've written. I was very simplistic at the very beginning, and I noticed some problems with being too simplistic in my writing with you. And then I was, and now I'm almost too flowery, and that causes some problems there. So finding that balance is tough. You've done a great job in capturing these stories on the finished product.
Well, thank you. You're right. In the beginning, I think you wanted to give me as much freedom as possible, but if I have too much freedom, and the writer's not explaining enough about what he or she wants, then the artist is just kind of making it up on the fly, and it may not be what the writer wanted. At the same time, you can't have too detailed a description, because again, it's all right, you're walking down the stairs, you're getting to the horse, you're getting on the horse, you're turning your head. They're just you have to find that happy medium.
I will say this to our listeners, that I've worked with another artist in the past, and that communication that you and I have on these projects was not there. It couldn't happen. It didn't happen. And the final product was a disaster in the whole scheme of things. So this relationship that you've created with the writer, with me, certainly will be, if someone hires you later on, you certainly bring that to the table, and I think that has made all the difference in this work. I think it's a great work that we've done here, and
I agree.
it's just getting better every time we write another volume.
Mm-hmm.
So that is part and parcel because of the relationship that you've agreed to have with me on this project, and you extend to your other customers as well. So,
I have literally had clients who have wanted to direct me. They're, basically reach through the screen and say, and take a hold of my hand with the pencil or with the writing, with the stylus for the Wacom tablet, and move my hand around on the page. They're not artists, but they just thought, no, I need to be so involved in this thing, that they gave the artist no freedom at all to. I mean, at one point, it was a really interesting story too, and I wanted to do so much with it. And the gentleman who had created this thing, and we were discussing everything, at one point said, so what do you think of it? And we had finished, and I said, oh, I think it's really good, and in fact, I'd love to see the film, because a lot of people actually will do graphic novels, comics, as their way of taking it to producers and what have you, and see if they can make a film out of it. Anyway, so he said, so what do you think? And I said, oh, I think it's really good, and I'd like to see the film when it's done. And he said, great. And I said, but, and he said, what's that? I said, this is not what I would have done. This is not the book I would have illustrated, because they were so intent on, they would send me volumes of pictures of let's say, this is World War II, so it's trucks and motorcycles and buildings and the clothing and to the point where I had very little that I could actually bring to it. I just basically was taking what they were giving me and doing my best with it. It turned out great. I mean, I was really happy with it in the end. It's just that I felt that it was lacking, because I would have brought much more energy to it. But it was the way the gentleman wanted to do it, and in the end, the customer's almost always right, and so that's it. He who has the gold makes the rules. So.
I've appreciated your bending with me and trying to make these happen. We've tried to make them as historically accurate as possible, knowing that there is absolutely no way that we can include every historical detail in every particular page and cover every story and sub-story within the confines of a 16-page comic or even a series. I will tell our listeners that we've gone to we've given the story, and each individual story that we have covers the rise of Thomas Sumter, who went from a burned out former Continental officer. He had given away or turned in his commission and was at peace at his home, trying to raise a family and mind his own business, so to speak, when the British came in in 1780, took over Charleston, came up the Great Wagon Road, burned Thomas Sumter out of his home, left his invalid wife and 12-year-old, 13-year-old son to fend for themselves. And because they were looking for him, they burned his home out and then went up and continued their takeover of South Carolina as best they could. Well, Sumter fled, linked up with some refugee militia, and they elected him as general. And this is the story of his pushback against the British Empire. He was the only he and his group were the only formidable force left in South Carolina, and they weren't even a continental force. It was just a ragtag group of militia from different pockets of South Carolina that came together to push back against the British and rallied the population against the British. You've done a great job in depicting this rise of Thomas Sumter, and I think our listeners are going to be taken aback about how good this particular story is. Within that story, we also have a deeper dive on each comic into sub-stories, whether it be some of the enslaved people that really were heroes during this time and should not be minimized their role at all, right? The problem with this, with a lot of these historical narratives, is we don't have a lot of historical record, but we can depict we can call out of these the records that we have, we can call specific moments of heroic or bravery that these people of color had. We can also we also magnify other people, whether it be the Catawba Nation, the indigenous tribe here that sided with the colonists. We have heroes that were young children. We have heroes that were the women that were staying at home and protecting the home against the British invaders, while their men were out in the field trying to take on, launch another attack here or there. So it covers a wide gamut. That deeper dive in the Footsteps of Heroes section, I really enjoy doing, because it does give us a bigger or a better picture of what was going on during that time and some of those heroes.
Well, I've learned quite a bit myself from, I know more of the history up here in Connecticut, in this area, but learning about what the events down there during that time have been very interesting. I really like what you did as far as not just saying, okay, there were these battles and there were these soldiers and that was this and that, but following a particular person, and then the offshoots, the other soldiers. You mentioned the other people that were heroic during this time. It was Bratton, his wife, when all those soldiers had been wounded in one of the battles, and she just looked at him and said, I want you to bring them all to our home. And she set up basically a field hospital. She wasn't a doctor. Women didn't do that then. And I don't think she had any training as a nurse or whatever, but it was, we need to help these people.
That's right.
So
that's right. Cool stories coming from that, and it shows the Civil War in the backcountry in South Carolina that happened all up and down the Catawba River Valley here during the Revolutionary War. You have the heroic Tory in that particular story, the Battle of Huck's Defeat, where the Tory actually saved Martha Bratton from being killed on the porch there by a British dragoon.
Yes, very close.
And then he ended up being wounded seriously at the end of the battle by falling on a limb, a tree limb, and that's all part of that historical record.
So it was interesting at that time. Their personal honor was extremely important. So this gentleman, as he's dying, basically, he might be thinking a million things, but the most important thing for him at that moment, because someone had said that he had attacked Bratton's wife, and he's, no, it didn't happen. Bring her to me. He wanted to go out with a clear conscience.
That's right.
And wanted other people to know that, so that, I guess, in history, and it turned out to be written, that he didn't do that, that he was a man of honor.
Yeah. Well, it's a fabulous story, and all of these are fabulous stories, and near and dear to my heart, and near and dear to a lot of people who are followers of the American Revolution. We hope to reintroduce this to a new generation in this genre, and hopefully we can take this genre and turn it into something more as we go along here. So this is our first step in a long process, and we appreciate you being a part of that. Um, let's kind of wrap up a little bit here. What are some other projects that you've worked on that you're proud of, that people could maybe get a peek as to who Rick Emond is?
Well, there is of course, the Historyman Comics, which I'm very proud of as far as working on this, because I really do like history, and a project that isn't simply entertaining. I think anytime you're trying to teach somebody something, so education, if you can make it entertaining, your students aren't going to go to sleep. They're not going to be writing notes, not going to be whatever, playing with their phone if they're allowed to do that. But they're going to be entertained, and they're going to be interested. They're going to learn, and they're going to want to know more. Most importantly, they're going to want to know more when all is said and done. And so for those people who said, well, it's the Revolutionary War, wasn't that like in 1927 or something, or 1960, or, don't have a clue. They're learning something about this. It becomes very interesting. They're reading a comic because, that brings them into it, because maybe the historical novels aren't doing it for them. It's too long or whatever, or a particular movie isn't doing it for them, or what have you. But a comic, they can do that. So they do, and next thing you know, maybe they want to see that movie based on historical events, or they go beyond that, and they say, I want to read that novel on Benjamin Franklin or Washington, or what have you, and not simply the Revolutionary War, but maybe the Civil War, maybe World War II, and what have you. It opens a whole new world to them, and in so doing, it opens up their minds are open, and it's going to make their lives much more fulfilled.
They talk about in education, they talk about learning windows, windows of opportunity, learning windows. And the beautiful thing I think about these comic books is that a kid can pick it up, while he's, in that downtime between the time he gets into the car with his parents and they get to Walmart or whatever. He can open it up, and it's almost like, I'm a former cop, so we talked some about gateway drugs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like a gateway to deeper dives, or deeper understandings of history, and they get excited about those things just in these small little reads.
It's addictive, yes.
That you can roll up at the end of your read and put it in your back pocket, and trade with your friends who have another volume. Hey, I'll give you this volume if you give me your volume. Let me read
Right.
that sort of thing. So that's one of the beauties of the comics, especially for children, is that it is not one of these things. I remember when we were growing up, we had to save all of our paper bags from the grocery store and then use them as textbook covers,
Sure.
to keep those textbooks intact for the next year, to save those all the
Right.
years. You can roll these up, stick them in your back pocket, and you're not really worried about that.
It's interesting that you brought up the paper bags, because when my mother would go shopping, she'd come back with all these groceries, put the bags on the counter, and I'd be sitting there waiting, and all the cans and the boxes and whatever came out. Then she would hand all the bags to me, At which point, or my sister, because I started drawing when I was about 3, so she would slice down the bags so the bags would fold out, and that became a drawing service for me. Because at that point, I was at 3, I was doing Starman,
Nice.
which I don't know. Somebody showed me how to draw a star, the star shape, and suddenly the star shape had a little cape, and I did dots for eyes and a little mouth and whatever, and I created this whole story for it. But so it's funny, the various things that you have in your life, that the most mundane things take on a whole other meaning in your life. They become so much more and lead to other things.
Rick, thank you so much. Tell our listeners again how they can reach you and reach the websites that show your art.
Okay, it's RickEmond.com. That's my website. You can see my work there. And then you can reach me at RickEmond. That's my email. You can also see my work on at Freelanced. There's a number of others, but that's primarily the one I keep going back to because it's been very fruitful. So anyway, that's the main way. If you really want to get hold of me, discuss anything, I still get a lot of fan mail regarding the Wizards of the Coast Magic the Gathering cards that I did. So there are all kinds of things that I do that we can discuss. If you have character pictures you want done, or if you have decided that you're going to step in, off the safe ledge there and take your story that you've always wanted to see turned into more. There's that. Right now, I'm enjoying working with Eric and just having a fantastic time learning about this, and where normally you're thinking of buildings and there's a car and this and that and what have you, really having to get into the times and what was there and how people survived on a day-to-day basis, and not just the war, but there you go. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. As we close here, I'm going to point out a couple of things from the Historyman comics that you've already worked on. Over your left shoulder, you got the Shattering. The Rocky Response is over my right shoulder right here.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Fishing Creek, the Battle of Huck's Defeat, and Carey's Fort, On the Warpath to Carey's Fort. And these were 5 of the 6 in this first series that we are doing. And if you're interested in getting a hold of us and reference these comics, send me an email at historyman1781@gmail.com, and we'll get you some information of how we can send these to you. We want to make them available to you at a very reasonable price. But send us an email. Let's talk about it, and we'll get these out to you. So thank you again, Rick, for your time, and we look forward to working with you some more.
Oh, definitely. I can see this going on for quite a while. At least I hope so, because again, I am enjoying the work, and I enjoy working with you, and I do really appreciate your writing on this.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Okay.